Hi everyone, it's Jana here. This is a topic that's really important to my heart and something I wish people talked about more, miscarriage, and the conversation around what I wished I'd known at the time I went through mine. I've actually been through 4 miscarriages in my life, and I'm very lucky now that I have quite a big family, including 6 children. And I think what I wished I'd known back then was how common it was and how few people talked about it. I was quite young, I was in my 20s, which is obviously a time when it happens less commonly, but again, I think it's that less people talk about it. I now work in women's health as a doctor, and I have the privilege of speaking to women in this space all the time. And the number one message that comes across is, well, how come none of my friends talk about it? Why am I the only one going through this space? And I feel a lot of us think so many guilty feelings. What did I do wrong? You know, I was training for the Olympic Games at that stage, and I thought, did I overtrain? Did I overheat? Did I eat the wrong things? I worried about it, whether it was the right time in my life to have a child. Therefore, did I think about things too much? Did I wish the pregnancy away? Definitely not. And I think that's a huge misconception, but I think it's also a taboo that we need to talk about around the guilt and the feelings that we have around, did we do something wrong? And in most cases, we know that it's a chromosomal abnormality or it's just terribly bad luck. And sometimes it takes out a really difficult conversation we'd have to have with ourselves in the early 12, 13 weeks of pregnancy if we found out there was an abnormality and what we do in that setting. So again, a really taboo topic that's hard to talk about. But I think you have to also combine this with all the hormones and, you start bleeding and then all of a sudden you've got a huge change in the way your cardiovascular output's already changed in early pregnancy and the release of those hormones. And sometimes you still have those pregnancy symptoms despite the fact that you know that the pregnancy is ongoing. I mean, it's not ongoing. And for me, one I think the hardest ones I had was going for an ultrasound and seeing a beautiful heartbeat, and then the planning and all the expectations around what that pregnancy and that life is going to mean for you, to then obviously come back a few weeks later and find out there's no heartbeat at sort of 9 or 10 weeks. And for me, the hardest part about that particular journey was that then I didn't miscarry. And so I continued to have the nausea and I continued to feel fatigue, and my body just would not let go of the pregnancy, and then having to have a D&C to expedite the process, and having to have that conversation around what is right for you and trying to make a decision. Do you take the medicine? Do you take the surgical option? Do you wait for expected management? And so for me, it's just, you can hear I'm babbling in this space, but that's actually what it felt like. There was just so much information and so much misunderstanding, and I had no one to talk about, so much guilt. And I just wish I'd given myself a break. I wish I'd had a few people to talk to. My own mother had gone through miscarriage. She'd gone through quite a late second trimester miscarriage, which was very hard for her. And so therefore it was a bit touchy around that space. And knowing who can you reach out to? There are really great organizations out there like Pink Elephant where you can reach out and talk to someone who you don't know. But the bottom line is breathe. It is common. It's heartbreaking. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever go through. But have the bravery to talk about it, to seek help, and to give yourself some space in that moment to grieve. 12 months will roll around pretty quickly when that birthday would have been and you would have been expecting a new baby in your arms. That bloody hurts. And the hardest part is not knowing if it's going to happen again. And it did for me on repeat several times. And I'm not alone in that space. And it's so hard to shape up again and go, all right, I'm going to give this another crack, or knowing when it's time to reach out and get medical support. So the biggest thing is we need to open this conversation. What I wish I'd known back then is to be brave and talk about it, to reach out and surround myself with people who have been through it and who want to support me in that space.